treat. All right. Well, another reason that I'm here, as everyone knows, is my book, Bothering the Coffee Drinkers. So I guess it's appropriate that I'm going to read from the book, just like the beats. If anybody wonders, Bothering the Coffee Drinkers goes to those Borders gigs. I don't know if anybody's ever seen, playing Borders. You're not really performing as much as you're bothering the coffee drinkers. So there's a story about that. And there's also a story, the one I've been reading live is a story called Billy and the Tuba. And this story came about, when I was in my band, Bucket Number 6, the Bucket folks. I remember we used to travel around and we always used to talk about how unfair it was that we worked these crappy day jobs so we could go out and play our gigs and do our thing, And we said, what justice there would be in the world if everything was reversed for a while, and say there was some like Wall Street accountant, and he was forced to practice tuba from like 9 to 5 every day, just so he'd have the opportunity to trade in the evenings. He's all bleary-eyed trading in the evenings, right? So this is what would happen if that world existed. It's called Billy and the Tuba. It's the shortest story in the book, so hopefully we'll get through it okay. All right, Billy and the Tuba. From behind a tiny desk in a dusty office on the 15th floor of a massive structure set in stone on a city block built before his birth, Billy paid 25,000 claims. Dermatitis, vaginitis, gangrene, gout, rabies, scabies, and cancer of the pancreas, pulmonary arteries, cardiac arrest, ptosis, thrombosis, and abdominal pain, all those claims in a single year. With fingers like stogie stubs, he pounded the computer keys, doubled his production, hung a picture of his dog, and waited for his supervisor to bring the simple word of thanks that never came. 25,000 claims in a single year. That's what Billy paid. Billy's cubicle was a small dot at the wrong end of a very long kaleidoscope. Grotesque characters surrounded him, wandering back and forth across the office, crisscrossing in random. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the fat lady, the bearded lady, the contortionist, and the midget. The carnival barker beckoned from deep inside the president's tent. Everything was covered with bright polyester poster paint. He could even smell the elephants. The only thing missing was the fun house. Billy stared at his watch and felt the window behind him. It was too cold to go outside, even for lunch. Yankee winters made him sad and homesick, longing for the old days when his mother was still alive. Daddy used to play fiddle and rubboard in a bunch of bluegrass outfits around Kentucky, including a stint with Bill Monroe and his boys. He wasn't home much, always out on the road to somewhere, and one day he finally left the family for good. He wrote Billy a note he wasn't old enough to read. Mama did the honors. Dear Billy, you're named after Mr. Monroe, so make me proud and learn to play this damn thing. Love, Daddy. Well, it wasn't a fiddle, and it wasn't a rubboard, and it wasn't a guitar or even a stand-up bass. The note was stuck to a huge white tuba, and the tuba stuck to Billy. Mama laughed in a funny way, like it was some kind of joke. Billy took it seriously, though, and grew up blowing that tuba day and night, sometimes until his lips bled. Pictures of John Philip Sousa hung on his bedroom wall. Time went on, and Billy came to learn that his daddy won the tuba in a card game from some fellow in a big top band. From that point on, Billy wanted to join the circus so he, too, could play in a big top band. Billy? Yes, ma'am. Here's some more work for you, and I expect this done today, before you leave. Miss Debris dropped a thick brick of data onto Billy's desk, and it landed with a hollow thud. She was a loud, abrasive woman with fat ankles and plaid hair. She was meaner than a gander and a lot less protective. She was Billy's supervisor. Billy despised the sound of Miss Debris' voice. Mama used to tell him it was okay to hate what a person's doing, but you shouldn't hate the person, because sometimes they just don't know any better. Still, Billy dreamed of turning the tables. A warm breeze swept down from the vent above Billy's head, blowing open a trunkload of memories. He saw a big old paddle boat down at the landing, water lapping at the shore. He saw a little boy with one leg on the landing, one leg on the boat. That boy better make up his mind soon, thought Billy. Billy's dream gave him a large mahogany desk, plush carpeting, and a corner office with a beautiful view of the Ohio River. He sat behind the desk wearing a top hat on his head, holding a bullwhip in his hand. The chair was elevated, making it easier for him to look down on his employees. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a big brown tuba, shoving it into Miss Debris' small, stubby hands. Miss Debris, from now on you must practice this tuba 5 days a week, from 9 to 5 each day. You may take half an hour for lunch. If at the end of the week you have not met our production requirements, you will be expected to work overtime until you do so. But Mr. Billy, sir, I have no need for the tuba. I'm terrible at it, and I don't even like music, sir. Billy let out a crazy laugh in his dream, sneering as Miss Debris shrank into a cowering ball. That's beside the point, Miss Debris. You were hired to play tuba for us. Do you really think you can earn a living working on computers? Fat chance. Pick up that tuba and start practicing it. If you want to make something of yourself, Lord knows you'll never marry. Billy swung his bullwhip in the air and cracked it on the desk. Miss Debris fled from his office in a fearful fit, the big chocolate tuba rocking back and forth on her hulking frame. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Sweat slid down her ankles. Billy! The smile dropped off Billy's face. He turned to meet Miss Debris' whiskered chin head on. Yes, ma'am, he answered weakly. Here's a file I forgot. Another slab of data fell with another hollow thud, even deader than the one before. It sounded familiar to Billy, but for a different reason. He picked up the file and let it drop again, repeated the process, and began to place the sound. A horse pounded a hoof on a hard bed of sawdust as the trainer snapped his fingers and waved his whip. Each of the questions was met with a dutiful reply, and all the while the horse kept both eyes fixed on his master's hand. The big top was bustling, and the president was happy. The payroll clerk came by with his lump of sugar, and Billy was home again. Mommy used to tell him that quitters never win and winners never quit. Furthermore, she said, quitting is a cowardly thing to do, Billy. It's like suicide or something. God don't take kindly to that. Those were her exact words. Billy would never forget them. He would never forget anything about his mother. Billy struck a match off the bottom of his shoe. Bringing the flame slowly to his face, he held the match still and watched the flame flicker and glow, rise and fall. It had a rhythm all its own, like an old-time carnival tune. He reached for a cigarette, but the match slipped from his fingers and fell into the cuff of a trouser leg. Mesmerized, Billy watched as his pants began to smolder. A long minute went by before he doused them with leftover coffee from his Thank God It's Friday workplace mug. Billy performed these actions as if he were repeating a sacred ritual, relearning habits long since forgotten. Then he ripped open a file and spread its contents all about his desk. He ripped open another file and another, until there was a week's worth of work piled up on the center of his desk. He rolled up his shirt sleeves and dove in with both hands, kneading a small stack until he found a bill for first-degree burns. He giggled as he held it high, striking a match and lighting the edge of the claim. Again he was mesmerized, watching the fire catch and gain momentum before he dropped it onto his desk at the last possible second. His laughter grew with the flame, slowly and steadily, up to the ceiling and out the door, riding high on a magic carpet of smoke. Mr. Bree caught wind of the smoke and the heat and the laughter and came galloping down the hall. Billy's desk was ablaze by then, a calliope of fire syncopated by smoke alarms going off in perfect time. Billy's crazy laughter punctuating the mad symphony. Mr. Bree's thunderous footsteps cued the crescendo, and as she turned the corner, Billy leapt onto his desk, rolling back and forth in the flames, a conductor deferring to his score. The last thing he heard was a single tuba note, low and mournful. The last thing he saw was his mama, holding her sides in silent laughter. They laughed together. She laughed last. There's a selection from the book.